3, 2, 1.
You are listening to the DBAD movement. This is a Don't Be a Dickhead podcast. I'm John Gilbert.
I'm Ian Thompson.
And I'm Alex King.
And today we are going to be talking about dickheadery relating to celebrity. Now, this has really struck a chord with the DBAD community, who have come in their droves to share with us their acts of dickheadery around celebrity. Or actually, more accurately, quite often outing their friends rather than their own behaviour. So yeah, we've got a lot to get through. So do you want to kick us off, Alex?
Yeah, so we've had a comment from Kelly Cheeseman. She said, I have been a tit in front of every celebrity I've ever met. I kind of can't help it.
There we go. Cannot help it.
Yeah. I mean, when we started making the Don't Be a Dickhead podcast early days, we defined what dickhead meant. What does being a tit mean?
I think it's kind of the same.
It's quite mild, isn't it?
You're a tit, yeah.
Yeah, just a bit of a tit. Don't be a tit, mate.
Yeah, I think it's sillier than dickheadery. Tittery.
Tittery, yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
The act of tittery.
But it's a gateway behaviour towards dickheadery.
Yeah.
It started with a tit, and then it moved on to other anatomy-based behaviour. But it's a good one to start with that, because that sets the tone for many of the other things that came through. And then the biggest theme around tittery becoming dickheadery around celebrities appears to be the introduction of alcohol, which is just comes up in all of our podcasts.
Yeah.
I think this is, if anything, I'm just learning, don't drink if you don't want to be a dickhead.
Just don't drink.
Dom Sphere says, I nearly vomited in front of Gary Newman.
Brilliant.
I was hammered after we did an interview, and my +1 managed to sway me away before I got anywhere near him. Dom is a professional journalist as well, so his +1 did him a favour. He's a music journalist.
Brilliant.
He shouldn't be getting drunk and telling the artistes what they think.
Yeah, I'm presuming that he was feeling sick because he was so drunk and not just he saw Gary Newman and felt sick.
Every time I hear Gary Newman, my brain always goes to the fact that, isn't it weird that Gary Newman is older than Gary Oldman?
Brilliant. That's good.
That's just my only factoid. Because Gary Newman did Cars, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a nice plug. Check out our previous episode on driving.
I don't know either of those people.
Degeneration. You don't know who Gary Oldman is?
I might know his face. I'm not very good with names.
Yeah, I think you will do. He's an actor. But we'll send you his we'll send you some.
He plays
films
Commissioner Gordon in the Christopher Nolan Batman series.
Will it make me feel sick?
I hope he does. Is that not him?
He won't make you feel sick. Well, he might make you feel sick. I don't know.
No, that's Gary Newman who made him feel sick, not Gary Oldman.
On tittery, and I expect we'll have quite a few tit behaviours. Lee Howarth was talking to me the other day. Is a friend of mine, and he was telling me about his mate who, when they were in Puerto Banús, is it Puerto Banús? Is that correct?
I don't know where he went on holiday.
Well, I don't know whether you've ever heard of the resort. Anyway, I'm presuming it's in Spain, and his mate went to the toilet and he was taking a leak, and in walked Rio Ferdinand next to him and started weeing as well. And he looked up at Rio Ferdinand, unsure what to say, and Rio Ferdinand looked down at him. And they were both weeing, and without knowing what to say, the lad just shrugged his shoulders and shouted in Rio's face, "You've been murked, mate." Do you remember the programme You've Been Murked that Rio Ferdinand used to do? It was one of the worst programmes ever to be on TV. So it was a great thing to shout, just "You've been murked," because he had to watch this lad pissing. To which Rio Ferdinand just looked at him, shook his head and replied, "Fuck off, mate." And so he did.
Oh, I thought Rio Ferdinand might have been interested in purchasing his urine off him so he could use it for his next after training testing. That might have avoided him a 6-month football ban. Always be thinking, Rio.
Yeah, missed an opportunity there.
But that, again, it's the whole thing when you encounter a famous person. Something happens in many of our brains, and it certainly happens in my brain. Not so much, happened a lot more when I was younger. There's a famous person, I need to make an impression or do something to make this situation memorable. Poor celebrities. They must have to encounter this all the time.
Yeah, and people just say like literally anything that comes into their head. So of all the celebrities I've met, generally I've had all right conversations with them. But then there's been a couple where they've caught me off guard, and not because they're really massive, because this one that I'm about to tell you now is not particularly famous at all. But it caught me off guard. I didn't really know what to say. So I was working in Hull, where we live. We have an aquarium called the Deep. And when it very first opened, I worked there for a bit as a guide. And I used to be on the entrance where they took tickets. And I loved it on the entrance because in the midweek, there wasn't that, as long as it was still school term, you didn't used to get that many people through. So I'd just take a book and read it and occasionally have to speak to people and put their tickets through. And so I was stood there reading on the entrance turnstile. And I was reading a book and whatnot. And this family walked up, and I looked up, caught completely off guard, and it was ex-England and Leeds defender Danny Mills.
Oh yeah,
remember Danny Mills? Yeah, bald-headed guy, and I think it was while he was playing for England as well. So he was about at the height of his career, and I just sort of looked up, noticed it was him, and just went, "Oh, are you from Leeds?" And he said, "Yes," and I went, "Oh, enjoy." And put his ticket through, and that was I don't know why, I just felt like I had to say something to him to acknowledge,
in that accent,
to acknowledge that I knew who he was. Well, I don't know. I mean, probably, yeah. I don't know why. I just felt like I had to say something to acknowledge.
Danny Mills was quite a scary player.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, to acknowledge that I knew who he was. So I said, "Are you from Leeds?" And not a dissimilar story as well was when, and this isn't particularly to do with celebrity, but when I went to Alcatraz. Once you finish the Alcatraz tour, then you go into the gift shop. And in the gift shop, whenever, I've been 3 times now, whenever you go, then there's always a former inmate from Alcatraz. They're all pretty old now, but cashing in by they've written a book or something like that, and they're there signing books. Now, I didn't realise this. So I was looking around the gift shop, not paying attention to anything, minding my own business. And when I looked down and realised I was at the front of a queue, and I'm being told to go forward to speak to this old guy who used to be an inmate of and I sort of looked up, didn't know who he was, read the thing behind him that said former inmate signs books, and I looked down at him, didn't know what to say, and he just said, do you have a question? And I said, was it good? And he said, no. And I just said, okay, thanks, and then walked off. I had nothing for him to sign, and all I could think to ask him was prison good? Was this infamous prison good? I had nothing prepared. I wasn't expecting that to happen.
Yeah. So just to set this opportunity, Ian and I have got a documentary about to come out. Can I just stress I asked the questions, not him. So we did probe deeper than that. It's about organised crime. My lines of question for people involved in organised crime is it good? What was the best bit about being a criminal?
Fave organised crime, mate.
When you used to steal cars, what was your favourite colour car to steal? But when you're caught off guard with that situation, people's reactions can be just so unpredictable. I remember the first time I encountered, maybe the first time I can remember encountering a celebrity was I went to watch Man United play at Old Trafford, and there was loads of celebs around, and John Watson was there, and he was signing autographs. So my teenage response was to just shove my mate at John Watson and shout, "Motty!" and John Watson just turned around to me and just looked so disappointed and angry at me at once, and I just felt like such a geek. And it was just a typical 13, 14-year-old boy's overly stimulated reaction, just shoving my mate. It was I'm just in school. But John Watson was just this is not there.
Like he was your puppet. So you didn't want to shove your face in and shout "Motty." You had a little puppet to go in, and you just did the voice of the puppet.
Well, yeah. Because I was a dickhead. If you're listening, John Watson, I apologise for that.
Me and Claire were down in London last year, and we'd gone to see a play. And at the interval, I went to toilet, and just as I was going into the toilet, out walks Hugh Lawrie, very, very tall. And Hugh Lawrie was there, and I just looked up at him and said, "All right." And he's hi. And then I walked in and went to toilet. And then I came back out, went and told Claire, Hugh Laurie's here watching the show. And she was quite excited as well. And then afterwards, we saw him with the person who he'd come with. And he was just outside the theatre, just like stood waiting. And Claire was like, "Why don't you go up and ask him, if you can have a photo with him or something like that?" I was like, "No, I don't want to, do that." And so she goes, "Do you want me to go up and do it?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. Yeah, I want you to go up." And so she went up, and she was reminding me when I said that we were recording Celebrity about how she spoke to him as well. And she said she doesn't know why she did it, but she suddenly went up and put on a really posh voice and just went up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Lawrie, I don't want to be an arse, but but I wonder if my boyfriend really wants to have his picture taken with you." So she basically went up to him and said, "My mate really fancies you. And will you go out with him?" And so would you have a picture taken with? Anyway, he declined.
Oh.
He said no. He said, "I don't really like having my picture taken," which is odd for someone who's in.
And you were just stood there, just in the background, looking real disappointed.
I was just stood like giddily, sort of bobbing up and down, and I don't know. I imagine I gave a flirty wave
And you were just
as he looked over at me.
I got blown out by Jimmy Carr in that situation. There was only me, Jimmy Carr, and his promoter, and I was the person that booked him for the gig. And I said, "Oh, Jimmy, do you mind if we get a publicity photo?" It wasn't even like a fan thing, it was a publicity photo. And he kind of looked at me, cocked his head slightly, went, "Nah, kind of tired," and just went into his room. Too tired to have a photograph taken. There was just the three of us there, and it was a professional thing.
He's got to use his facial muscles.
Yeah, well, he doesn't though, does he? And then, so I then went and watched his show, sat on the front row, and I was just annoyed with him.
Didn't laugh.
I was trying not to laugh at any of his jokes. I wanted him to pick on me, and I was going to explain why I wasn't laughing at his jokes. I'm glad that didn't happen. I would have looked like King Dickhead in front of 2,000 people. But this thing about... I respect Hugh Laurie's decision not to have his photograph taken with you, because what's happened is that Celebrity now, they're just like... We just expect so much of them. We want them to do something all of the time. I mean, so Sally Gilbert said that when she met Paul Gascoigne, she went up to him and asked him the time, which I think is quite a nice one.
Yeah, it's
just so you've spoken to Gazza.
Yeah, and it's not using up too much of the time. You're not asking them to do anything weird. You're just like, will you just be a regular stranger in the street? And it gives them a bit of respite from their normal hectic lives.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. When I met Paul Gascoigne, he made we had a bit of banter, and he said he really liked my jacket. So I was trying to convince him to swap jackets with me. He declined. He was like laughing, but what his eyes were saying was, "I don't like your jacket that much, mate. I was just trying to be polite. You're taking this a little bit too far now." For God, I wasn't drunk in that situation. Otherwise, I'd have think, what about our shoes? Or socks? Let's swap something. Pants. In my very limited acting career. So I remember my mum came to see me in a show that I'd written once, and beforehand I said, "Mum, my character's very strange, and he talks about having a sexual relationship with his mum and other things." I said, "I'm playing a character. It's not based on reality. I don't want you coming up to me after the show and going, 'I can't believe you said that about me,' and so because." So I did the show. Went through all of the graphic detail, and then of course she comes up to me, "I can't believe you said that about me," and I was, "It's not you, and that wasn't me. This is acting, right?" I said, "Did you really think that I'm also a murderer because I played a serial killer in the show? Because that's not true either. I didn't want to call it theatre because it was comedy rather than theatre. But yeah, it just goes to show when you're as talented as me, people find it very difficult to distinguish the difference.
Even your mother believes it.
That I was a bestiality obsessed serial killer. I played in that. So thanks, Mum, for believing in me. Wow. And when people meet celebrities, sometimes they just want to make that impression. Lisa Baxter says, "When I was about 23, I was in a Virgin plane from Washington to London, got horrendously drunk because of my fear of flying, was told Richard Branson was on the flight, and I decided to try and find him for a nice chat. My ex had to literally restrain me."
That's something I would do, I think. I've just got like bridesmaids like visions in my head. The other scene where she's on the plane. A friend gives her like sleeping pills and alcohol, and she's like really drunk, and she has to sort of make the plane land. Have you not seen it? Oh,
can't
it's a
remember
brilliant
this.
scene. But yeah, that's the vision I had in my head of that.
And what's that film called where the guy's trying to get together with the girl and he sings to her and Billy Idol helps them out on a plane?
Oh, it's Adam Sandler, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wedding Singer.
The Wedding Singer, that's right. Yeah. Maybe they thought it was going to be like that and Richard Branson was going to be great and he'd help her with a part of her life or something.
Maybe, yeah. When I was on a flight last year going to Ibiza, there was a bit of a stare about the chap sitting behind me, and I think this is something that's interesting about the cult of celebrity for several reasons, because people could recognise this guy, but he wasn't famous enough that they quite knew where from. They're like, that guy's famous. And it turns out he was a singer from the band Liberty X. Do you remember them? They were runners-up on X Factor or Pop Idol or something like that, weren't they? And they had a couple of big hits. And he's now, actually, he's the lead singer with Wet, Wet, Wet.
Wow.
I didn't know that at the time. We just Googled it.
Is Marty Pello just doing solo now then?
Yeah, certainly. Maybe he is. I mean, we can go down this route in the podcast if you want.
No, good luck to Marty.
The rise and fall and rise of Marty Pello.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
I bet he still looks good.
So, look, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about this guy called Kevin, who is now the lead singer of Wet, 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 but used to be in Liberty X. So once people realise who he is, alcohol is again involved. So every now and again, the Jet 2 flight would go into sexy, everything about you. And so if he got up to go to the toilet, all my mates just started singing at him. And I just this is just so cringeworthy.
Did he say anything?
It was funny, but it must have been horrible. Well, I mean, how does he take it? I mean, he's just smiling. And going, good one, guys. That's great.
I'd have wanted a performance down the aisle.
Yeah.
But then, you see, he's trapped then, because if he did that, then people are going to think he's a dickhead. Going, look at him, God, one-hit wonder, Liberty X band.
But he could have started off with a couple of Liberty X songs and then gone on to like Wishing Well and things like that.
Yeah, but then they'd be like, oh, look at him trying to take credit for Marty Pello.
Well, I mean, that's his
We're much more interested in what happened to
his... taking credit for Marty Pello. Get another job if you don't like it, pal.
Yeah, well, I don't know how well paid it is, but it was a pretty cheap and uncomfortable flight. Although maybe, you see, I'm assuming he can afford to do that as a celebrity. Even if he can do it, maybe he's just like living like us.
Yeah.
Another airport, I mean, you tend to meet a lot of famous people at airports, or I tend to. Once in the lounge, the man who came and sat next to me, I was quite excited when I realised that it was former Manchester United and England football captain Bryan Robson.
Nice.
And I got chatting to Bryan, my choice, not his, about what he was doing and where he was going, because he now works as an ambassador for Manchester United of their operations in the Far East. And I asked him, did you enjoy it? And he went, yeah. He said, but I do miss the coaching and I miss that part of the game. And I was just, at which point, alcohol-fueled John steps in with some advice for Bryan Robson. And just go, but when you go across there, are you going to be seeing like some of the Asian clubs? Yeah. I said, will you be going down to the training ground? He goes, yeah. And I said, well, run a training session. And he started laughing. He went, but that's not why I'm there. And I went, mate, you're Bryan Robson. If you want to go to that club and say, I'm running the training session, they're going to let you. And it was like, in my mind, it was like the greatest idea in the world as I transfer. He'd be like, you're right, John. Just like, I am Bryan Robson. If I want to do that, I can go and do it. But yeah, something in his eyes just told me, like, yeah, mate, that's enough now. I'll carry on with my cup of coffee while you drink your 15 glass of wine.
He's now head coach of a Malaysian football team.
Yes, Bryan.
Alex, what else has the DBAD community been saying?
So we've got a comment from Andy Train. He said, so many stories, including meeting the devil himself, Jimmy Savile, at the big breakfast shoot at PQ in Hull. Princess Key.
Where in Hull?
I don't know if he means Princess Key.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. Wow. Okay. So he met Jimmy Savile. What's interesting there is he hasn't said anything more about the story.
Yeah, it's just telling.
I mean,
yeah, but my dad actually used to always brag because my dad's a joiner, so he works on site. And one morning, Jimmy Savile came up to them all on site and said, "Look, I'll buy you all a breakfast." So my dad used to brag about that he'd had breakfast with Jimmy Savile, and obviously.
What did Jimmy Savile want in return?
He was quite young at the time. I was like, but that's. It's besides the point. But when obviously all this came out...
I mean, fortunately, your dad wasn't dead at the time, so I think Jimmy Savile had stayed away from him.
Yeah, but when all this came out, he soon changed his tune. So, like, yeah, that was his claim to fame, that he'd had breakfast with him.
That's really upsetting for your dad because he no longer had a really good celebrity story.
But I still tell it because I find it quite funny that he used to brag about it.
We've had a great story in from Paul Story, who, whilst working away, was on a fashion shoot, and he was working in construction there. He had breakfast with a lady 3 times and got to know her and got chatting, and she was asking him about his business and what he did, and he asked her what she did, and he said, "Oh, is this fashion stuff? Is this a full-time job for you?" Then she said yes, and he says, "Oh, right, who is it you work for?" And she said, "Vivienne Westwood." It was Vivienne Westwood.
That's brilliant.
So that's quite a nice story, because it's like, he in no way would be starstruck or kind of like intimidated by a celebrity because he didn't know who they were.
It's nice that she was just like happily having breakfast every morning with them as well.
Yeah.
Well, we imagine she was happy.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't
me and
know.
John know Paul's story, so she'd have had to know a lot about Liverpool Football Club, and if she didn't know a lot about them, then she would have done by the end of the conversation.
Yeah. But I mean, I imagine she was still happier than your dad sharing his breakfast with Jimmy Savile.
There's worse people to share breakfast with.
Strachan Bolton says, when we were once in London with Freedom Road Kids, we met Lee Ryan from Blue. And then she's
Great
put,
spot.
they were big then, lol. We all got our photos taken, and I kissed his cheek, and wait for it, said, "Oh, what baby soft skin you have." One of the kids said, "Grandma, put him down."
That's lovely.
hilarious.
Nice.
I mean, I suppose it's kind of a compliment, but it is creeping him out. I mean, I think this is the thing about the treatment that the general public give to celebrities can be quite shocking at times, because we forget that they're real people. So Jenny Harrison has said, one time working pantomime, I got Joe McElderry. Do you know who he is? He's the X Factor winner, who's probably most famous for one reason, which is relevant to the story. I got Joe McElderry for Secret Santa. I thought it would be really funny to get him the Rage Against the Machine album, because he lost the Christmas #1 to them when he won X Factor. Turns out he's quite sensitive about it and was visibly upset, and I ruined his Christmas night out.
That's great.
Poor Joe.
I don't think that's dickhead behaviour, because she was trying really hard to do something funny.
That is funny.
But not if you're Joe McElderry. I mean,
thoughtful.
If you say to me Joe McElderry, I think of, oh yeah, the guy who won X Factor, and then famously the nation turned against him, and we all bought Rage Against the Machine to keep him off Christmas #1, and therefore destroying the Simon Cowell tradition. That Joe McElderry.
Yeah, fair.
I think she might have thought that it'd just take it on the chin there. In situations like that, I feel like you've kind of just got to.
I suppose.
I think the lesson to be learnt here about dickhead behaviour is try not to speak to celebrities whilst you're drunk, but also try and ask them a normal question as opposed to being too excited about it. See a celebrity, take a breath, then go and speak to them. Drink a strong coffee, then go speak to them.
Maybe we should apply the Alcatraz principle.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Just simple questions, just like, so what are you doing? Are you happy?
What did you have for dinner last night?
Message came in from Stuart McDonald, who says, when I lived near Ipswich, we used to go to Portman Road. One time we were playing Torquay in the League Cup. We half hoped to bump into Helen Chamberlain of Sky Sports fame, knowing that she was a Hughes fan. In the pub by the ground, my mate Jim soon got talking to an older fella. I noticed Helen Chamberlain come in and stand behind Jim. She waited patiently. Jim finished his chat with the older fella and shouted over to us, "Right, fellas, let's go and find this Sky Sports scrubber." Miss Chamberlain reached past Jim, touched the elderly gentleman on the arm and said, "Come on, Dad, we need to go now." Oh,
That's brilliant. Love that story.
okay.
And that's definitely dickhead behaviour.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah, we shouldn't be calling women scrubbers. Definitely not when they're standing behind us. And definitely not in front of their dad.
Yeah. And I think that's the take home from this.
Yeah.
Let's just treat each other, regardless of our level of fame, with absolute respect.
There we go.
Yeah.
we really appreciate, obviously, everyone who emails and social medias in to the podcast, as many of you have this week, and thanks very much for that. If we could ask one more favour of you all, and that's to pop on to wherever you get your podcasts, like and subscribe, and rate us as well. If they don't have a like, subscribe, and rate method, then you can pop over to the iTunes store and rate us there as well, and that'll really help us get more listeners and more of the community reacting to our social media posts and giving us more content, which is great and makes for better shows. And on that as well, we'd like to reward you for doing that every week, and I believe John has a rap for us this week.
I don't believe he has.
But he was going to try.
You want me to freestyle something?
On the spot.
I want you to freestyle as a rap.
Okay. Can I get a beat?
I just did one.
I can see your cheeks going, but I can't hear a beat. I'm just going to imagine there is one. Okay. So this is a real story. This is not fiction. You can help us out by doing a subscription. We really want to hear all of your rates and maybe share this with your mates. Will that do?
Hey, it's good.
Very good.
I don't know why I did like the dad. I know I did a dad rap because I'm an old dad.
There we go.
Nice. That was so good that I don't think they're going to believe that was freestyled.
No. So, on that note, I've been Ian Thompson.
I've been Alex King.
I've been John Gilbert. And remember,
Don't be a
don't be a
Don't be a
dickhead.
dickhead.